about. We're behind the scenes at the Danforth Music Hall with a Canadian treasure, gentleman who's an actor, singer, songwriter, member of the Great Big Sea for 22 years now. I'm talking about Alan Doyle.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here. Thanks for coming.
Your book, Where I Belong, you're talking about growing up in Penny Harbor, Newfoundland. You talked about one section, you mentioned a beef bucket. You had to use it as a toilet. I know, and also cram 5 people into a two-room house.
Yeah, we never had a lot of stuff, and the beef bucket ended up being like a significant thing in Newfoundland when I was a kid because, you know, in the generation before mine, you know, there was no refrigeration and all that stuff, so it was all salted beef and salted pork came in these plastic buckets, and if you lived in a fishing town like I did, that was one indispensable tool that got left over after you ate all the salt beef or the salt pork. They got used in the fishery or used around for a million different things, you know, and around the house or even around the wharf and stuff. So it's just one of those things that I wrote about because I guess it kind of embodied what my young life was like.
Your mother also taught piano too, so you grew up around a lot of people that played musical instruments. Yep. You know, do you have any stories that really stick out in your mind growing up in that area? And then I know when you were a teenager, you moved over to St. John's.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a musical place where most, you know, lucky for me, music was incidental. Like I didn't get in a car to go to music lessons, or I didn't sit down at 3 o'clock on Fridays to learn to play an instrument, you know, or something. It just seemed to be around all the time, and that was, you know, of course, is the most organic and lucky way to make music, you know. And I remember, you know, a couple of times going into St. John's to try to get a songbook, you know, to learn a couple things or whatever. But for me, it was the fact that I don't have one memory or one time or another that speaks to my young sort of musical apprenticeship is very significant because it wasn't like that. It wasn't about one famous day or one turning point or something. It just happened all the time.
And you know, if you take a look at the history of Newfoundland, right back to World War I, up to this point, the major contribution that the Newfoundlanders have made to the Canadian military and prior to that to the British Empire, you know, how important you think it is to get behind the veterans right now because of what's happening with you're having, you know, these Veterans Affairs officers are being shut down in Maritimes, and the list goes on.
Well, for me, you know, and maybe this is a selfish answer in a way. I mean, I live in the cultural world, right? Like I live in the world where I rely on, you know, people from a generation before me, like to give me stories that inspire my music or my writing or my art or whatever. And my mind goes there immediately when I think about the Canadian veterans. I think, guys, this is an invaluable resource of knowledge, history, of experience that we can all draw on if we take care of them. And then of course, I'm sure many other people answering that question would answer it in a different way. But I just, for me, I have so much respect for their wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, and how that can fuel the arts, and how that can fuel opinion, and how that can fuel, how we govern ourselves.
CBC has been a major part of the Canadian culture. I mean, it actually played a major role in the Republic of Doyle. I mean, you created a film industry where prior to the Republic of Doyle, there was no film industry really in Newfoundland. Yeah. How important do you think the CBC is to the Maritimes and all over Canada with the massive cuts that happened to CBC, not only the Conservative Party, but back in the 90s when they cut $450 million, the federal Liberals did?
I'm a massive CBC fan. Of course, I always have been. I mean, when I was a kid, that's the only place I could get to see music being played live from a different part of the world. You know, I used to watch the Tommy Hunter show.
I love that show.
I loved it. And, you know, that's how I saw it. And, of course, in my professional life, I mean, every time we turn a cycle over or put out a new record or a movie or a book, you know, one of the first places we look to is the CBC. And I think it's important for us on this end of it, you know, to have an outlet so that we can make sure Canadians can hear what we're doing. But I also think it's important for a country that we watch ourselves on television, that we hear the kind of music we're making from different parts of the country, and that we hear each other's stories. The country's really big. It's not like a smaller piece of geography. You know, it's not easy for a kid from one corner to hear everything that's going on in the other corner, and we need a vehicle to do it. And for me, that's always been the CBC.
Some of the major artists that you've had a chance with collaborate over the years, I'm talking with the composer from the Law and Order, and also Russell Crowe. You were not only co-wrote some of his songs, but you also were a producer. And I think an album called what is His Hand or
My Hand, My Heart. Yeah. No, I met Russell here in Toronto shooting. He was shooting a movie called Cinderella Man, and he'd been aware of Great Big Sea from a little while previous, where he was in Canada shooting a movie called Cinderella Man. And a bunch of the Canadian guys, tipped his hat to and turned his attention to the Great Big Sea. And Mike Post, the Law and Order guy, same drill. Some members of his family were Great Big Sea fans. And I just feel really lucky to have gotten a chance to work with Russell and Mike and Keith Power and Gordy Sampson and Oxley Workman and Jim Cuddy and, just the different people that have graciously given me a little bit, or in some cases a lot of their time.
You have 2 albums right now that you've done solo. The latest one is So Let's Be.
So Let's Go.
So Let's Go.
Yeah.
And there's one song off it I really love. It's at the end of the Republic of Doyle, the final show, and that's how the show ends.
Take Us Home. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, it was just luck that it fit in there. It's really a song that's on the surface about a wedding. It's about some guy offering his hand and saying we're going to go forward together and we'll be together forever and that kind of thing. And as luck would have it, in the Republic of Doyle, they without being a spoiler alert, there is a wedding scene towards the end of it, and it just ended up being a song that tells people about the joy of having been together and the joy of going forward, supporting each other, and it's turned out to be a beautiful thing to sing in concerts too.
Do we have to look forward to any more albums coming out of you, or are you going to star in any TV shows or films?
For the next block of time, it's all about promoting the So Let's Go record. Most of 2015, I'll be touring, doing my own thing. So that's what's up next. After that, I'm not sure.
So just check out your website.
I hope so.
And your website?
AlanDoyle.ca. Check me out anytime. I'll be around.
Well, thanks a lot for your time,
Thanks so much
Alan.
for
You're
having me. Thank you.
True Canadian hero. Thank you so much.
Grateful, man. Cheers.